A medical dream comes true under the drive of industrialist Henry Kaiser, who holds the plans of the ultra-modern hospital designed by Dr. Sidney Garfield, director of the Kaiser Foundation. From the admissions office on, everything is streamlined and expedited. The patient's record reaches the doctor before he does. This is the last word in a combination X-ray machine and fluoroscope imported from Holland at a cost of $25,000. Every portion of the body through 180 degrees can be photographed. In the operating room, the first light of its kind is installed. No portion of an operation is ever in shadow, nor is the expectant father forgotten. Here he can get the news officially and suffer under the most comfortable circumstances possible. And for mother, well, she has only to call for her baby, and baby comes sliding through a wall in a drawer-like bassinet for a little visit with the new mother. In this $2 million institution, doors are opened by remote control, and on the single floor, patients are easily moved from place to place. Dream grounds for a dream hospital. The answer to a doctor's prayer.
I've spent my entire professional career in Washington, D.C. as a scientist, a physician, and a public health official. Although that career path is fundamentally devoid of politics in the classic sense, being in Washington has allowed me to experience firsthand the intensity of the divisiveness in our nation. What troubles me is that differences of opinion or ideology have in certain circumstances been reflected by egregious distortions of reality. Sadly, elements of our society have grown increasingly unfazed by a cacophony of falsehood and lies that often stand largely unchallenged, ominously leading to an insidious acceptance of what I call the normalization of untruths. We see this happen daily, propagated through a range of information platforms, social medias, and so-called news organizations. And sad to say, certain elected officials in positions of power. Yet, the outrage and dissent against this alarming trend has mostly been muted and mild. If you remember nothing else from what I say today, I truly appeal to you. Please remember this. It is our collective responsibility not to sink to a tacit acceptance of the normalization of untruths. Because if we do, we bring danger to ourselves, our families, and our communities. This is how a society devolves into a way of life where veracity becomes subservient to propaganda rather than upheld as a guiding principle for creating and sustaining a just social order.
So a sister up in Seattle emailed me a couple days ago and shared a couple pictures of the sticker she's been seeing on a dumpster every time she takes the dog for a walk that says, "Stand up for science." And she explained to me that at first she thought it was just kind of a joke, like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen type parody or something, but turns out this is a real organization called the Union of Concerned Scientists. And when I went and looked it up, they got articles on all the sorts of stuff you would expect. Climate, energy, transportation, food, nuclear weapons, science and democracy. And, we use science to make change happen. The Union of Concerned Scientists is a member-supported nonprofit that's fighting for a safer and healthier world. Well, that sounds pretty great. And there's a lot of stuff on here, but the thing that got my attention the most was this resource guide that they have available on countering disinformation in your community. Disinformation is poison in the veins of our society. It undermines democracy, fosters division and hate, and blocks progress on the most pressing issues of our time. What is disinformation? Lies and misleading information deliberately spread for financial or political gain, usually at the expense of the public good. Coordinated groups of bad actors actively push disinformation in order to divide communities, delay action, and distract and demoralize those trying to build a healthy planet and safer world. While disinformation harms everybody, coordinated disinformation campaigns often disproportionately target and harm Black, Latino, Native American, Asian, and Middle Eastern communities. A broad and interconnected network enables the spread of disinformation. This includes a range of political organizations, elected officials, corporations, and their lobbying groups, and other bad actors. Often it's the same bad actors, like the Cook-affiliated American Legislative Exchange Council, and certain fossil fuel companies that fund and disseminate disinformation across multiple issue areas: climate change, voting rights, pandemic response, and more.
Scientists are saying the future is going to be far more futuristic than they originally predicted.
If we make the right investments, we won't need to live in fear of another COVID. We can build a health system that is ready to stop outbreaks before they go global. Here's how it should work. Epidemiologists will detect suspicious clusters of a disease that could cause a pandemic. A global team of 3,000 disease experts managed by the WHO, called the Germ Team, will track the disease and share data and recommendations with governments. Governments and pharmaceutical companies will work together to use factories all over the world to get an unprecedented scale of diagnostics and vaccines very quickly. We'll have an agreed protocol and we'll understand how to share the results globally. Countries and the WHO will work in the best way to allocate these tools and to make sure that we have the logistics and delivery to get them to everyone who needs them. The key to be ready for a potential pandemic is to practice. And so this germ team will work with each country to do germ games, drills where you see, are you ready? Could you get the diagnostics out? So we're ready to go when we see the outbreak. Diseases are always going to spread among humans, but they don't have to become pandemics. You can read more about this in my new book, How to Prevent the Next Pandemic.
Disinformation is a big problem, but the good news is that well-informed and well-intentioned people like you dramatically outnumber bad actors who intentionally spread disinformation. All of you can and should play a role in countering this toxic and growing threat, and holding accountable those who are behind it. Science and the scientific community have a crucial role to play in this fight. To inoculate yourself and your communities against disinformation, you will need to share best practices and resources for recognizing and responding or not to disinformation. Proactively and preemptively raise awareness of specific disinformation tactics, and establish and center key narratives and resources that are grounded in shared values. You must consistently call out and expose the creators and purveyors of disinformation, reveal their true motivations, and push to hold accountable the platforms that enable and accelerate the spread of disinformation. And you must act locally, lending your expertise, connections, and skills to state and local organizations leading the charge on issues you care most about. This guide provides the information, pathway, and tools you need to take meaningful, effective action to counter disinformation in your community.
Keep your rosaries up our ovaries! Keep your rosaries up our ovaries!
Yeah, that's what that says. Be aware of how bad actors can weaponize your good intentions. They exploit your attempts to warn people, exploit your attempts at good faith conversation, i.e. wasting your time explaining the truth to people who are deliberately lying, exploit your attempts to demonstrate your awareness, twist your consent ethic, i.e. your discomfort with taking action before achieving consensus. Be aware of how bad actors weaponize your bad habits. They exploit your tendency to retain negative information more than positive information. Exploit your well-actually tendency, i.e. responding rapidly to perceived threats or opposing messaging. Exploit your false sense of superiority, e.g. shaming people who share false information. Exploit your attempts to change others' minds instead of changing your focus. The more visibility you give to disinformation, the more you help spread the disinformation due to the illusory truth effect. What you repeat, you reinforce, even if it is false. Therefore, avoid quoting disinformation, even to joke about it. Avoid sharing images of the disinformation. Lead with values. Intentionality is the foundation for well-being and message discipline. Decide at the start who and what you will engage with, for what purpose, and for who and when, for how long.
Learned judges, my case is simple. It is based on our first article of faith, that the Almighty created the ape in his own image, that he gave him a soul and a mind, that he set him apart from the beasts of the jungle and made him the lord of the planet. These sacred truths are self-evident. The proper study of apes is apes. But certain young cynics have chosen to study man. Yes, perverted scientists who advance an insidious theory called evolution.
How you communicate will affect how the disinformation can be countered. Keep a calm, non-judgmental attitude. Prioritize empathy over expertise. Look for points of connection, e.g. shared faith, love of community. Look for and acknowledge underlying concerns. Use your expertise to explain the truth in a way that speaks to their underlying concern. Be aware that you may not always be the best messenger to counter disinformation in certain situations, especially if you belong to institutions that have historically participated in or benefited from oppressing members of the community now targeted for disinformation.
At that point, we didn't really understand the fatality rate. We didn't understand that it's a fairly low fatality rate and that it's a disease mainly of the elderly, kind of like flu is, although a bit different than that.
This is one of the key reasons it's important to repair the harm and work to rebuild trust with trusted members of a systemically oppressed communities. Here are some ways to begin that go beyond one-on-one interactions.
A lot of people are saying it could be a conservative if the leaker is a Republican, and if I get pregnant during our lovemaking, I will joyfully abort our fetus and let them know.
The do's and don'ts of refuting lies and attacks. Do use individual stories to illuminate collective trends and statistics. Don't repeat, replace. Instead of repeating a misperception, replace it with factual information. Do name what is true while emphasizing what is possible. Don't prioritize facts and statistics over storytelling. Do use news cycles and real-world incidents to advance your narrative. Don't prioritize myth-busting. Do meet people where they are and lead them to somewhere better. Don't create an air of doom and gloom. You can convey your seriousness and the seriousness of an issue without sending the message that the situation is hopeless, because it's not.
Whoa! What the fuck is wrong with you?
Back up!
You fucking predator! Why would you push her?
Equipped with the tools above, you can now educate others about how to counter disinformation. The ultimate goal is building a strong network of people in your family, your community, and your state who will be empowered to neutralize the spread of disinformation. This is known as relational organizing. To be effective in any campaign, organizers must build relationships that will persist, despite the challenges of oppression. In societies where a small group of people hoard and use wealth to wield power over everyone else, it takes large groups of people working together to disrupt oppression and restore a healthy balance of power. And building a network that has power in numbers starts with building strong relationships among as many people as possible who share the common goal of liberation. One-on-one conversations are the most effective way to build trust, gather information, identify concerns, identify points of persuasion, share information, inoculate against challenges, and mobilize people into action. Our guide, Effective One-on-One Meetings for Mobilizing People into Action for Voting Rights, offers everything you need to know to be successful at relational organizing on any issue, not just voting rights. Once you've familiarized yourself with that guide and this one, you'll be ready to defend your community from all types of harmful disinformation. This guide, produced by Dr. Sofia Marjanovic and Lindsay Berger, is adapted from the intellectual property of community strategist Sabrina Joy Stevens and Jane McAlevy's Strike School, based on her book No Shortcuts: Organizing for Power in the New Gilded Age. Content can be shared freely as long as credit is given to Sabrina Joy Stevens and Jane McAlevey. Well, let's give them full credit. Good job. Just doing my part for science, yo. So now you're equipped. You know how to deal with all the disinfos. You know how to fight against those bad actors now.
We begin at 5 with breaking news. The first case of monkeypox has been detected in Massachusetts.
The Department of Public Health says an adult man had traveled to Canada before catching the virus. We're told there is no risk to the public. That patient is hospitalized and in good condition. The DPH says monkeypox is a rare but potentially serious illness that typically begins with flu-like symptoms and swelling of the lymph nodes and progresses to a rash on the face and body.
This is the first case of monkeypox in the U.S. this year. Texas and Maryland each reported a case in 2021.
elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway. 75.